All right, y'all, welcome to another paid review. Surprisingly, today I have been requested and paid to review a dude I had a ridiculous conversation with, Sinoverse or Sinku. If you guys watched that video, it was labeled Freak Show Debate, and it was a complete nightmare. And pretty much the argument there was this guy can draw 10 times better than me. So whatever, if you want to have a blast, have a laugh, go ahead and watch that. Go find it on the channel. So the friend of Sinko has requested and paid me to make this review of chapter 1 of Black Blaze, Clashing Ideologies. Now, as you know, here on Coffee Comics, we have a standard, and we judge by the MANAA ingredients over here. If your story, if your product has all 4 of these ingredients, it is a great product. If it has one of these ingredients, it has potential to be a great product. If it has 2, then you're halfway there. 3, it's great. 4, home run. So we're going to be judging it based on this, but right off the bat, I will say that I don't actually know what this comic is aimed to. I don't know who the target audience is for, because the honest truth is that despite me and Sinko not liking each other and him calling me a stupid African, I will not be biased in this review and say, because he was mean and all that. No, I won't be biased. I'm going to be objective. And the objective reality is that I personally would have not read this thing had I not known Sinko at all. It is not my cup of tea. And secondly, I don't know who the target audience is because the way it's executed, it reminds me too much of a webtoons, but it's in the format of a normal American comic book, but borrows heavily from the manga style. So it's a fusion of a lot of things, but it just doesn't harmonize completely. The closest thing I can say as to what type of product this is, I would say it's a webtoons. It's only a comic, American style comic, because of the layout, the panels, and the style though reminds us of manga. So it's a bit all over the place, and it's not something that I would pick up. So that's issue number 1. Issue number 1 is that who are you trying to sell this to? If you went to Anime Con, right? Would there be any manga lovers who would actually say, oh, that looks great, I want it? I honestly don't think so, because genuine manga consumers who consume things that are Japanese manga and are inspired or drawn to shonen style things, they would look at this and say, this is not Shonen Jump like material. In other words, it already starts to fall apart in terms of the MANAA ingredients when it comes to the familiarity. It is not familiar with anything the general manga indie consumer base consumes. It is not familiar. And if it is not familiar, you're cutting away a huge portion of those who can buy your product, you see. So this is the cover. It looks all right. It looks all right. I do like the character designs. He is fairly consistent in capturing the character designs. There aren't many inconsistencies. So that's cool. Let's go to the second page. So here it opens up with the prince of this planet, Magnius. I will say it was hard in the beginning, getting used to these names. I have no idea what these names mean. These names are given to us as if there's a familiarity that we can draw memories from what these names represent. I'm sorry, I have no idea what they represent. I don't know what language this is. Is it Latin? I have no idea. And the problem when creating a completely new universe, right, is that if it's 1,000,000,000% new, you do then destroy familiarity. You see, unfortunately, that's just how the world works. You're not supposed to rip things off, right, and say this is legitimately Hogwarts. You saw Hogwarts in Harry Potter, you put the name Hogwarts in your story, or you call it Nigwarts. That's a straight up ripoff. It's like, bruh, you are creatively bankrupt. But when you then try to create something completely new, it is not that you're creatively bankrupt, it means you're creatively desperate. See, that's where creativity comes, is that you see something similar and familiar and you twist it all around to create a new product. If you go to Pizza Hut and Domino's and you order pepperoni with garlic, right? Some people might say that'd be nasty. Let me say my favorite pizza is Hawaiian. It got pepperoni and pineapple. People hate that. I love it, right? You go to Domino's, you order Hawaiian. You go to Pizza Hut, you order Hawaiian. Same ingredients, though the execution is different. The taste is different. You see what I'm saying? The experience then is different. So that's the creative part. See, creative bankruptcy is straight up taking Hogwarts and calling it Hogwarts or Nigwarts. Creative desperation is doing something completely new, saying, I want Hawaiian, and instead of putting pepperoni and pineapple there, you put beef sausage and strawberries with pineapple and Hawaiian. It's like, bruh, this was a desperate attempt to make something new. Strawberries on pizza, you want to kill people, you know? So it was very hard for me to get immersed. I've spoken about the importance of immersion in your storytelling. In order for people to be properly immersed, not only do the visuals need to comply with the dialogue, but the dialogue itself must comply with the story, with the visuals. And a planet is a planet. It's made of rock, gas, and maybe water, right? You can get a desert planet like, Mars, or just a gas planet like Venus, or whatever the other planets are. You get what I mean. So ultimately, it's like, okay, man, it's hard for me to get immersed over here. So anyway, so it opens up with the main character, the Prince Magnus of the planet Magmion, right? A flourishing world, one of the most beautiful in the cosmos. And, but I don't know how long this beauty will last. And my reasoning is because of one crazy man, Karoax Ilay. See, it's hard, man. It's hard. It's like you're trying to create these Kryptonian names. And it's like, well, you don't have to go that far, bro. It's like you're trying too hard. You don't have to go that far. And another thing I'll say that really was somewhat of a pain to immerse myself further in this world was the type of speech bubbles used, right? The speech bubbles are all either like straight up squares, rectangles, or ovals. They had no real personality. They felt like they were just added at the end, right? It felt like this entire comic was produced on Photoshop CS5. I'm just being real. It does not feel like it was produced in Clip Studio. I could be wrong, but honestly, it does not give me a aesthetic that's, okay, Cinco here used the latest tech. Now, you could say that, hey, it's not his fault, man. Maybe he's struggling. Well, I don't think so. I don't think so because I know where he works. So it's like, bro, you ain't struggling for nothing. You can get Clip Studio, so come on now, right? So another thing, it is hard, going back to the standards here, familiarity is already forsaken, right? It has already unfortunately failed there. But when it comes to relatability, which is the most important, it has no relatability because how many of us actually want to protect something? Now, here, basically, you can say the main character wants to protect his world, his planet, right? He is fearful that some crazy dude, Karoax, is a crazy guy, and he's going to launch an attack because his wife died at the hands of the prince's people, and now it looks like he wants revenge. And the prince is worried and wants to protect his people and wants to protect his kingdom. Two things. Number one, I know nothing about his kingdom. I don't see much about it. The only thing about the planet Magmion that we see are these shapes over here. We see the prince flying. We see a random woman over there. We don't know who she is. It's like you're putting the idea of what you're trying to say in front of us. You are not immersing us in the world of Magmion. You say it's one of the most beautiful in the cosmos, yet we are not shown how beautiful it is. We're not seeing mountains, we're not seeing trees, we're not seeing the culture, we're not seeing anything that makes it beautiful at all. Don't tell us, show us. You see? So that is problem number one in terms of immersion. It's like I can't get involved fully in the story because I don't know what sort of world this guy's trying to protect. You know? Problem number two is that he says he wants to protect his planet. And this goes into the fact that it's lacking relatability. And some can say, well, bro, don't you have a family that you want to protect? Guys, none of us can protect our families now with the real threat happening. You see, we are not experiencing world wars or traditional cultural wars like there were 600 years ago plus. Now, we are experiencing ideological wars that all of us fail to protect our family members from. You know your uncle, your father, or your mother took the juice and put it in their arm in 2020. Some of you tried to warn them. You failed. It's not your fault, but you failed. Nonetheless, the relatability of like, I want to protect what's precious to me. The only thing people truly protect now is their ego. It's what they can protect. It's what they can protect. You don't have to protect your family like that from the threat of Russia nuking you. Even if you wanted to, how? How can you stop a nuke? Biden just might nuke you in his sleep by accident. You see what I mean? It's actually demoralizing now because you don't actually have full autonomy. And as a man, you don't have full control over your life as maybe you would have 1,000 years ago. Right? So in that regard, it's not completely relatable, but the idea of I want to protect my family, it is there, but it is not fully, not even well executed because the love he has for his planet is not properly executed here. He doesn't show us how much he loves his planet. He doesn't show us what he loves about his planet. Maybe if he spent more time showing us that he loves this McDonald's here, he loves his girlfriend over there, He loves that park over there. He loves that lake over there. Then we'd be like, all these things must bring true peace to this character. And he doesn't want to sabotage it, right? The same way many want to protect either their ego or their safe space. When you're in your little room, you don't want no crazy people walking up in there. It's your own little sanctuary. Then, okay, it would make sense. But in order for it to be relatable, you got to show us. But instead, we're just being told. And then it falls flat when it comes to immersion. So then he arrives here and he begins to talk to his twin brother. And here, the idea that he flew from far away and said, "Hey, little brother, you transgrammed me." And then we're given the names Magnus. I cannot read the surname at all. And again, it goes back to creative desperation. And so he asks, "Do you realize you owe me about 1,000 Zena units in property damages?" Furzon. And Furzon says, you and about 15 different skeezies. I've seen this moon cycle alone. So what did you want to talk about? The first time I saw this word skizzy, I was like, isn't this some slang from downtown Atlanta in the US? Now, I don't live in the US. I'm in Africa, right? I heard this word skizzy before from some American TV show. So for me, I was like, wait a minute. This is an intergalactic space war story. Such wording is not applicable here. Again, breaking the immersion. Skizzies? Now, if I'm wrong as to like maybe a skizzy is something that falls very well so in the context of space opera, then okay, I'm wrong, but I have never heard it. Never heard it. It just doesn't sound like it belongs here. You see, once again, breaking the immersion. The difficulty of pronouncing the characters' names also breaks the immersion. See, so then they begin to talk, and little brother Magnus, begins to say, "Look, brother, I'm worried. I want to protect the world. I said we need to go attack and ambush the Mad King," and so on and so on. I will say in this page, please pay attention to the speech bubbles. Do you see my issue with them? How robotic they are, and how much dialogue there's in there. I understand in American comics there can be speech bubbles of this shape, but the way they are implemented is not so flat, so redundant either. You see, it's carefully considered. Here, it does not feel that way at all. It is too bland, and it feels like it was put there just to get the words out. If I were to compare this to a manga, why? Because it uses the manga style for these character designs. And we'll look at this random manga I just found on Manga Plus, actually. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. This damn African internet. What you talking about, Manga Plus? Oh man, it's the real world problems, everybody. See, this manga right here, let me choose a simpler one. Please work. Okay, so notice the speech bubbles in these ones, how they don't seem so redundant, and they don't seem so placed for the sake of just being there, right? They actually have different shape language, right? Different shapes, basically, different edges. We kind of know how the character or what the character is feeling based on how the speech bubble is drawn, right? And there isn't much stiffness them just being there. But here there is. So it's a problem for me. Also, again, with the dialogue here, so many times it is just these two talking, right? So many times they would say, Magnus, I understand what you're saying, but this, and that. So from skizzies, that's very informal slang, right, to very formal dialogue here, where they say a surprise attack. I thought letting you take my spot on the throne next to father was me acknowledging you having better judgment than I, Magnus. I will say the author forgets to put commas over here. It's like, bro, there needs to be a pause. You can't just have full stops and exclamation marks. There needs to be a pause, because you just read, and you need a pause, you know? So here, however, my issue was that it's just two characters talking, and it would end off like, I thought you had better judgment than I, Magnus. And then it would say, and who's to say that I don't have that judgment, so on and so on. But then they repeat each other's names so many times. And it's like, guys, it's just the two of you here. And brothers are not so formal when they speak to one another. You can say, hey, the author was trying to make sure to show us that these guys have a formal relationship. But that's not true, because in this page, well, they were making a lighthearted joke. Hey, you owe me $1,000 for property damage. Well, why is that actually? Why does he owe you $1,000? He didn't break your window. There's no indication that this window is broken. So where is it coming from that you owe me $1,000? So clearly it's a joke. So clearly they are not as formal as one might try to desperately defend this very moment. They're not. So again, it broke the immersion, it broke the social interaction. And so like, how exactly is their relationship over here? You know? Moving on. So he pretty much tries to place more of his argument as to, yeah, but he might be stronger, but I still want to ambush him anyway, yada, yada, yada. And then he says here, you just don't get it, do you? You wouldn't stand a chance against him. I'd rather kill you myself than let you go get yourself killed by the damned Ice-Ronian. So that is the other race that the Ice King is in charge of. I'm sorry, I can't remember the names. I'm just going to call him the Ice King, and these are the Fire Princes. You see the fire emblem on them. They got fiery hair, they got orange skin. So yeah. And then here we can see that Magnus is disappointed. And then his brother says, I'm sorry, but look, you are the future. Me and dad will go fight. You just have to wait, go sit on the throne, and so on. And then 500 light years away from MANAA, I will say that the font choices in this comic, I'm not sure that the font in these dialogue boxes are even CC wild words, because that's the usual industry standard. I'm not sure if it's Comic Sans, I'm not sure, but my issue is not the font in the speech bubbles, it's the font right here. This one that says 500 light years away, man, this is a space opera, ain't it? So choose your font wisely. Let it again help us immerse ourselves in the idea that you're trying to sell. When you got Coca-Cola, the drink, if their font did not synchronize with the idea that they're trying to sell us, when you drink it, well, it would be a bad product, right? You wouldn't want to pick it up. So the Coca-Cola font is unique in the way it's done. It's got these twirling, swirling shapes to it, right? Giving the idea of, well, liquid, I guess, but also refreshment. And that's important because this font right here, like for this panel, this looks like the font Impact, the standard font you're gonna find on Photoshop or your computer. And that's a problem, you see. It's a very big problem. It breaks the immersion. So here's another problem. So we are shown a new place, the Magnian and Ice realm. The fire and ice conflict is about to turn in favor of the ice people, right? So it says here 500 light years away from fire people. This location, we don't know what it is, but we're told later as we read that it's actually a colony, a moon colony. So the fire people are here and they are receiving a distress signal. I will say, again, it's hard to care at all about the world at all that's happening because we're not shown anything about the world. It's hard to care about the characters because everything is happening so fast. Their overall desires and what they want. Yeah, Magnus wants to protect his world, but we don't really know why. It's just a generic reason why. I just want to protect them. Well, how does your planet make you feel, bro? Why do you want to protect it? You see what I mean? We can't relate, so we can't care. And then we see these are the soldiers on the moon colony. They see the distress signal, and then these guys are saying, I'll alert the captain. Let's go do this, blah A's. See, creative desperation, again, it just breaks our immersion. It really does, man. I cannot stress that enough. Moving on. They inform the captain that, hey, we got intruders coming. And then the captain's like, gallant, oh man, I'm tired of these names. You see, I'm just butchering them. Move out and prepare for warfare. So just like that, war begins. And I know that this panel is supposed to be impactful, but it does not feel impactful. You see, unfortunately, it's lacking something for it to be impactful. It's lacking contrast. Good understanding of contrast can go a long way. Now, can we say that the author here wanted to implement passable? Now, passable is something I created. There's no way he knew about it. This is passable. Passable, right, is not sacrificing professional standards for finishing a product. No, it's keeping professional standards, but making sure these 4 elements are excellent. And element number 1 is contrast. There is no contrast in this story. None, right? Visually, then, things just they're not striking, right? The composition. Sometimes this composition's all right. Sometimes it's not. But unfortunately, the ratio of good composition versus bad composition, it's like 4 to 6, unfortunately. When it comes to character expressions, unfortunately, a lot of the character expressions are stiff. They are stiff, and it breaks our immersion then to actually feel what they're feeling. The speech bubbles rob us of what they could be feeling because they are all mostly ovals, right? Their facial expressions are bland or not properly executed, so it robs us yet more of what they are feeling, you see. And the panel flow, when it comes to his fighting scenes, the panel flow well. They do. But in the beginning, not so much. So in terms of passable, he didn't know that it existed because I made it. And again, passable is not sacrificing professional standards for finishing. No, it's simplifying professional standards and still being able to satisfy the viewer. Another thing that I gotta wonder is that his anatomy for these characters is fairly good, but something's off. And why I say it's off is that look at the arm right here. Look at it. In this position, this is not what your arm would do, right? Your bicep in this angle does not look like this. Your elbow ain't in the front, right? It's not. And if that's not supposed to show the bicep area actually, but show the back and the tricep, well, the tricep doesn't look like this. So I began to wonder, because you see here, in this scene here, right here in this panel, right here, the tricep is actually illustrated correctly. And it made me wonder that there is a great deal of stiffness in his characters. And usually when there's a great deal of stiffness, it means somebody is using mods. It means somebody is tracing the character mods. And it would explain why all of them have the same body. All of them have the same body, the same proportions. Something is off. It doesn't feel or look convincing. Something is off. Someone who does trace, right, but cannot draw is going to make mistakes and expose themselves like this situation here. Even the hand over there does not fit the perspective. It doesn't. This whole area here, we don't know what he's standing on. It doesn't look like he's actually touching anything. Now, a 3D mod would position, you'd be able to position it like this, but for you to make it actually hold something properly according to this scene would be hard or close to impossible. Am I accusing the author of using 3D mods? Hey man, I think he did. I can't fully prove it, but there's just too much stiffness and all the bodies look exactly the same, man. They look exactly the same. Something's off. Everybody's got the same proportions. It's either this one's slightly more buff, but ultimately all the shapes are exactly the same. Man, I'd be stuttering like a bastard. It must be this damn green tea I drank. Anyway, and look at the size of their shoulders. They all got bowling ball shoulders, all of them. So it's like, nah, something is off here. Once again, breaking the immersion. Because all these characters don't feel real. They feel like cut and paste characters with different hair and different clothes. That's the issue. And then we get to here where the moon base is being destroyed and so on. Yeah, this seems very rushed. I'm taking my time with this. If I hated Cinco, I would have said, no, I'm not taking this commission to review. No ways. And I would be just butchering this thing from a personal point of view, an emotional point of view, but I'm not. I'm being objective. So then the captain, the fire captain, decides to fight back, and he prepares his, sun blast, and he fires away. Now, he fires away and he blows it up, and then we see some newcomers, the ice captains now, they're coming in. We've just lost a battle tank. Men, stand down. And so they arrive and they kind of introduce themselves and they say, in time, colonial, again with the names, man. I must try negotiations first. The enemy is monstrously outnumbered. Blah, blah, blah. It's hard to care about the story, man. It's just not relatable. It's not familiar. So it is hard to care and read. I'm sorry. And here is the example of, look at how all the bodies look the same. Look at these guys. They look exactly the same. I can't fully prove it, but something just feels off. Another thing that could cause the reason for the stiffness in the characters could be that the author drew this on Photoshop. Now, last time I checked, that's why I said it looks like it was created on Photoshop CS5. Photoshop CS5, as I remember it, because I had it, it did not have touch sensitivity. It didn't have sensitivity options. Everything was just a straight line, no line weight, nothing. Right? Just lines. Robotic, flat lines. And so that's what this feels like. Everything here feels robotic and flat, you see. And in addition to that is because all the speech bubbles are all ovals. The font is just basic fonts, just taken from the default settings of your computer. It does not synchronize very well with what's going on. I mean, you could say here he tried, but it's like too many times you didn't try. So they have a standoff, and the ice people tell them to surrender, and the fire people say no. And then here comes the ice people for a fight. And then here the fight breaks out. Now, the paneling here and actually the fighting is pretty good. It's pretty cool even, right? So dude at least knows how to do fight choreography with these big Dragon Ball Z like fights. So it's like, okay, at least, man, at least you can do that. You can do that fairly well. However, you see in a page like this, it's like, bro, we need to see debris. We need to see debris. And this part here where it's this blur tool effect, it totally looks like a Photoshop blur tool. Totally 2010. It's like, man, you gotta use new tech, and it's not for a lack of resources. It's not. It's just a lack of caring, I would say. So they continue to fight, and the fire people totally obliterate the ice soldiers. And then the ice captain says, I'll handle this. And that's it. That's about it. That's the end of this chapter. So, what score will I give this? If I were to judge this as a webtoon, right? Just as a webtoon, because there'd be plenty of webtoons just like this that don't have really a story that we can relate to or care about. If his intention was to create something like a webtoons and to create a disposable story, then it gets an 8 out of 10. Straight up 8 out of 10. If he wanted to do a webtoons like thing. If he was straight up trying to do a comic or a manga comic fusion, this unfortunately gets a 4 out of 10. Especially with the coffee standards using the MANAA example. If I put that, it gets a 1 out of 10. And the only reason it would get a 1 is because the only good thing that I enjoyed here was the fight. Everything else was really difficult to care about or to get immersed in. It was only when they started fighting. The fighting was actually pretty decent, actually pretty cool. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I like this part. Under the coffee comic standard, it gets a 1. Under the manga comic fusion, it gets a 4. Under the webtoon standard, it gets an 8. And a webtoon standard, that's just a disposable story. Yeah, it gets an 8. So people, you just gotta know, who the heck are you trying to sell your product to? Who is your target market? If you're gonna create a manga, it gotta look and feel like a manga. It gotta read like a manga. You gotta apply the standards. Some hunchback degenerate still had the gall to be like, oh bro, You don't adhere to your own standards. When I ask why, he can't explain. And that's how you know it's just a retard. So, look, Cinco, you got to figure out who you trying to sell to, because nobody buying this at Comic-Con, bro. Okay, I shouldn't say at Comic-Con. No one buying this at Anime Con or Anime Expo. Nobody. Because they be like, this is not a manga. Not at all. At Comic-Con, you might find some buyers. You know, at a flea market, you'll find some buyers. But you're in this space here, the manga indie space. So it's like, this is not what people would actually jump into, okay? But anyway, yeah, better luck next time, man. Better luck next time. Guys, if you want your own manga review, it's $20 per chapter, all right? And a chapter has to be 20 pages, okay? That's the length of it. And you can pay through PayPal and DM me on Instagram. Until next time.